Hello and welcome to Maester Monthly, your favorite pseudo-monthly podcast hosted by the moderators of the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. Before we begin, as always, this podcast is spoilers extended, which means that material from the Game of Thrones television program and the Winds of Winter sample chapters are all fair game. You have been warned. I am one of your hosts, Michael, also known as Bookshelf Stud.
And I am another one of your hosts, Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And I'm another one of your hosts, Matt, also known as Joe Magician.
He forgot his name.
I did forget my name a little bit there. I was like, am I going to do a joke here? Am I going to be Aegon? Am I going to be Eliana? And then I was just like, I guess I'm just Matt.
You were torn between identities. I thought you were torn between Matt and Joe, and I was like, wow.
But that does happen to me fairly regularly.
I'm sure it happens to a couple of our other moderators who are joining us today fairly regularly as well.
I'm Jen, also known as Jen Snow. I don't even have an excuse of forgetting my name. It's literally the same thing. Jen is my first name in both places, in real life and on Reddit. So, you know, it's awesome. Next.
Her name is Jen Snow in real life.
Yeah.
I am a northern bastard.
I'm Walda, only known as Fat Walda. Can't do also known as if I only have one name, right?
Same. And I'm Isobel, also known as Mighty Isobel.
Yeah, you have an adjective at least modifying your name. So that's, you know, we've got a few adjectives in here. Well, as always, we've got just a ton of hot takes and nice catches from the subreddit, the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. And of course, we've been on vacation for quite a long time. We went to tour the ruins of Valyria. All the Maesters did. We piled onto a small dinghy and sailed to Valyria together, and now we are back with tales and treasures. We also accidentally brought a plague back with us, so sorry about that one. That was us. But before we get into all the posts and discussions and wonderful things from the subreddit, it is, of course, spooky season. As user LChris24, best of 19, by the way, Crow of the Year. So, big shout out to LChris24, who made a post entitled simply Woods Witches, in which they say, spooky season is upon us, and one of my favorite major practitioners in the series are the different Woods Witches. So, today, before we get started, I want to ask you guys, who is your favorite witch in A Song of Ice and Fire? And I'm going to insert, like, cackling noises here and, like, the music from Hocus Pocus.
You couldn't have said which witch is your favorite.
Yeah.
That's too complicated.
I don't get it. Is that
See? Too complicated.
What of the witches, of the witches, what one of them is your favorite?
Please choose one.
Whomst among the witches.
Whomst
That's right. Whomst among the Glass Table Girl / Eliana. Which witch is your witch?
I'm kind of torn, right? So I am torn. Actually, it was 3, but now I'm gonna just narrow it down between Mother Mole and from the list that LChris24 has put together with Harlan / Herndon's wife. Mother Mole is really interesting and is a character that I hope we learn more about, because Hardhome, you know, everyone talks about it and how it seems like something interesting is happening up there, but I am not sure what's going on with Mother Mole, what sort of role that she's playing in the story. But also Harlan and Herndon's wife, like, sounds to me like girl could get it, and I respect that about her. She's just like, I want both.
And she got him.
Yeah. Hopefully, you know, it wasn't something sinister, you know? I like to think that she just had a lot of agency, and, you know, it was like a gender flip version of what happens with, what is it, Jacob? Is it Jacob? With Leah and Rachel.
Is this Friends? Are we talking about Friends?
Yeah, doesn't he?
This is the Bible?
The original Friends.
Of course, the Bible, not Friends.
It's like the same thing.
I think it's Jacob. I don't know. Yeah.
There could have been a Jacob on there. I bet there was at some point.
She's got that WAP, you know? She's got that witch.
Witchy ass book.
What?
Stop myself.
Yeah. Congratulations to Harlan / Herndon's wife.
Yeah.
Actually, was she even their wife, or were they just hooking up? Because I'm not really sure. It sounds like she was a woman who would not want to be tied down by any hunters.
So my understanding is right. They founded House Charlie together with this woman, and I'm like, so which one is it?
It's House
That's
Hunter
true.
too, right? Both of them.
Harlan the Hunter and Herndon of the Horn
Yes.
took to wife the beautiful woods witch who lived on
Oh,
Horn
did
Hill,
take the wife. Damn it.
sharing her favors for 100 years.
Wow.
That's
So, you know.
I don't know how any of it works.
But so Mother Mole or Harlan / Herndon's wife, you're saying?
Yeah, both of them intrigue me, just in general. Especially because I don't understand how either of them really work. So those are the two I would pick. They feel spoopy to me. And
Yeah. Gotta get the cackle in there. Jen Snow. Who was your favorite witch?
It feels like, so because we're using Google Meet, it feels like we're in an online class, and apparently Michael is now the teacher. So I understand
We're
just
fucked.
randomly calling on people. So I don't
Yes.
have a particularly deep cut, but my favorite witch in the series is the Ghost of High Heart, because I am a sucker for all of that lore that comes with why Prince Jaehaerys commanded Aerys and Rhaella to marry, and the whole prince that was promised legend. And we still know so little about what that's going to be. So Ghost of High Heart, absolutely.
I mean, it's hard to argue with that. She is the
great choice.
yeah.
the witch.
And how, the way the history and the lore, as you said, like sometimes we think of that as the books in the Citadel and the Reader Harlaw's books, but it's also the Ghost of High Hall and her like oral tradition, and there it is. The history is in all of that.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's like the when they went around in Appalachia in the early 1900s, whatever his name was, blanking on the guy, but pulling all the old folk songs and all that old stuff that otherwise gets lost. Like, yeah, she's the history like under the hill for sure.
She's also got a very compelling way of delivering her dreams. Very story-esque. She's very good at it.
Yeah.
So, like, see here. I see you, wolf child, blood child. I thought it was the Lord who smelled of death. That is cinematic. She's playing to an audience, and she's great at it. Way to go, Ghost of High Heart. Some people deliver their dreams, and it's kind of like, whatever. Ghost of High Heart, she makes you want to listen.
That's pretty much like what all of my older relatives would say when I like showed up at family reunions as well. It's like,
Wolf child.
I see you, wolf
Child
child.
blood. Yes.
you wolf child. Yeah, got a lot of that.
You do need a haircut though. So like,
Yeah, well, yeah, I've been getting that a lot.
Aw.
I'm growing it out in case I need to get resurrected. I've heard that that's involved in the. They do a little clip,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
a little clip and snip, and yeah.
you're confusing the mods who didn't watch the show.
Yeah, in the television program Game of Thrones, Melisandre gives Jon Snow a haircut when she brings him back to life.
Is that a
Oh, I
euphemism
forgot
for
that.
something?
I mean, it may be a euphemism, but it was a visual euphemism if it was.
I thought it was just to disguise that Kit Harington had a haircut or something.
I think that was really.
I really think that's
what it
all
was.
it was. In the deep cuts of
Everyone was like,
of-
Kit, you need a haircut.
Maybe it was to symbolically represent that he was dead, because there's the thing about the deceased's hair growing after they die. And so it's like she's cutting his hair because he's actually dead. And then he, as opposed to saying like, oh, well, maybe he never died. Like,
It's been, what, like 4 or 5 years now since that scene aired, and that's the first time I've heard that
Haired.
suggestion. Like, haired. Wow. I'm writing that one down. Well, then who is your favorite witch then, Walda?
I'm gonna have to go with Maggie the Frog. Because I mean, like the Ghost of High Heart, she's all about the prophecy, and I like that. I like that she has sort of like in the post, she's mentioned by all of the Lannister children, and I think that's really interesting that they all knew of her growing up. She's like this figure near Lannisport, and she's this witch that was brought, this priestess that was brought from the east by Lady Sybil's grandfather. And so she was just sort of the local, like, you go to get her charm, you go to get her to taste your blood to tell your future, stuff like that. And she's, of course, the one who delivers the Valancourt prophecy. So
in some ways, she kicks off a lot of the action of Game of Thrones.
And also, I didn't realize that the actress who played her in the show is also the actress who played Queen Calanthe in The Witcher.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. I missed that.
Yeah.
The Witcher.
Oh, wow.
Very spooky.
I've never
She's
seen
the
The
witch in Witcher?
Which one?
Which one?
Nice.
Host one.
My favorite thing about
Oh my
Maggie
goodness.
the Frog is that she's Jane Westerling's great-grandmother. And I don't know
Yes.
if there's any sort of hereditary aspect to Wood's witchiness, but I like the idea that Robb Stark's wife has inherited something. Like, there is no indication whatsoever so far in the books that's true, but I like the idea of it.
Yeah, you could almost see, like, 80 years down the line, there's like this old woman in the Westerlands who, tells people's futures, and she tells everyone that she used to be married to a king, and everyone's like, it's a bunch of bullshit. But it's Jane or something.
She's
I don't know.
the
Yeah.
future
Ooh.
ghost of High Hall.
Wow.
Oh.
They're churning out. It's almost like Westeros like churns out traumatized women or something. Like that's really weird.
I also like it that this posits at one time Maggie the Frog was a smoking hottie with great hips.
She was
That's true.
smoke show. She's the Zsa Zsa Gabor of.
Cersei's not the best POV to tell us, was Maggie beautiful or not, right? She was always very predisposed to seeing herself as the most beautiful. But what if Maggie was, as Matt said, a hottie?
A hottie with a body, yeah.
Yeah, those hot
Yeah.
frog legs.
Well, Matt, who's oh my God.
Those very froggy legs.
Matt, since you have some specific tastes in Wood's witches, who's your favorite witch?
My favorite witch is very on brand for me with all my love of House Strong and what came out of Fire and Blood, and that is, of course, Alice Rivers, the best witch of all time. You are all wrong. Alice Rivers is the best. Why? Number one, calls herself the Witch Queen of Harrenhal, badass title. Rules from Harrenhal for several years. Perhaps got most of the male members of her family killed, or at least lit some of them on fire. That one's on the table. She
Nice.
tamed basically a dragon with Aemon One Eye, who was going like sniveling around being like, oh, I have a dragon, I'm so cool. But Alice Rivers is the one that was telling him where to go and what to do. She was the one in charge. Supposedly had a child with him. And what was the other thing about her that was really cool? Also during the battle over the God's Eye, she was apparently just standing on top one of the towers with like her hair billowing behind her, looking like a total badass. Plus she saw stuff in the flames. Alice Rivers is the best.
Oh my God, she's got it
Yeah.
all.
Sold. Yeah.
She has
Yeah.
it all. Taking down the patriarchy, taking down the dragons, connections with the old gods, connections with R'hllor, maybe because she sees stuff in flames, everything. Alice Rivers, top tier.
But has she potentially accidentally led to the downfall of her people? Actually, yes. That
Yes.
is something Alice Rivers does have. Never mind.
She has it all. Her ambition got the better of her.
That's true.
She's a cautionary tale and also a hero.
Oh, the best. The best kind of characters.
I wonder,
The
I
look
wonder
of
if she's...
confusion on
I
Eliana's
wonder if
face is
there's a
classic.
chapter about
Like a
it in
hero?
Cautionary Tales for Ladies. What's the book? Cautionary Tales for Young Girls?
A caution for...
Young
A
girls.
Froggy
cautioner's,
legs.
a cautioner's tale.
Whoa. Wow, it makes sense if Jeff wrote that book. It finally all makes sense.
Everything comes together.
But yeah, that one's about Corianne Wild.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
she has a lot of things that they say that she did in that book, but none of them seem to be magic.
Wild things.
Yeah, wild things. It's a children's book, in fact.
That's right. Where the wild things
A
are.
caution's tale
The
for
Westerosi
young
Girls
women.
Gone Wild.
Yeah.
This girl's gone
Wait,
canon even.
wait, is that what George is doing there? Is that like a
Oh wait,
joke
shit!
of his
I think
on
you're right.
Oh boy.
Girls Gone Wild?
I think you're
Like,
right.
Oh my god. We're uncovering the mysteries of asoiaf, and we're like, what, 10 minutes in here? We're gonna solve everything by the end. Mighty Isobel, who would you say your favorite witch is?
Well, if you read Elchris, his post, and go all the way to the bottom, there he has Nettles on the list. And with the quotation about the burned men, and how the Maesters believe that an offshoot clan of the Painted Dogs were said to have worshipped a fire witch in the mountains, sending their boys to bring her gifts and risk the flames of the dragon she commanded to prove their manhood. And that's obviously a reference to the theory that this fire witch is where Nettles went when she flew away with that dragon. And that's more that cool, deep lore. She's if she's Targaryen blood, we don't know how, and she's very cool, and you don't have to be a Targaryen to ride a dragon, and these people thought she was a witch. So she's my pick.
Yeah, I do really like Nettles, and she's one of the, I think, most interesting characters from the dance, in my opinion. So I like that, and I like the idea that she, went up there and was like, "All right, people, bring me gifts." Or maybe they just decided to start doing that, and she's like, "I don't know, what am I going to tell them? No."
Be rude.
Right.
But it is rude.
And whether or not it's true, it's kind of, she's kind of Schrodinger's witch, which that's fine.
Ooh.
Schrodinger's witch.
You'd make a good witch. With the cat? Come on, witches and cats?
It's almost like she's the opposite in some ways of Alice Rivers, where Alice Rivers is like purely, she's just straight up, everyone thinks she's a witch. Whereas Nettles kind of like earns her witchiness. She's like this peasant-born person who gets a dragon and then, again, assuming this was her in the mountains, like graduates to, she gets her PhD in being a witch.
She's a witch, like, from the people, and she becomes a witch of the people. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The people's
Inspiring.
witch.
Yeah.
Man.
I just remembered something, that Alice Rivers also choked a guy from like 30 miles away. Choked him to death.
Darth Alice Rivers is what you're saying.
Yeah, she pulled a Darth Vader because he said the wrong words. Badass.
But did Alice Rivers get an entire clan of people, or no, a clan of the boys of the clan of people to offer a part of their bodies to the fire? As the...
Fire and Blood too, maybe.
Just wait for the sequel. Yeah, you know what? Like reading...
If a Targaryen is involved, the answer is yes. Yes.
Fair. But reading his post, and I totally forgot about the burned men. So in Elsie Chris's post, he writes under about Nettles. Amongst the burned men, a youth must give some part of his body to the fire to prove courage before he can be deemed a man. And thinking about Nettles not being able to refuse the gifts, and then seeing what that eventually turns into. Could you imagine? She's just sitting up there like, I did not tell them to do this. I don't know where they got this idea that this is what we should be doing, but I just wanted some food, guys, and this is uncalled for.
She's just chilling in her cave, and some guy runs up to her and like cuts off his ear and is like, "I worship you."
Yeah, I've proved my bravery.
Could you bring bread?
I know. Could you bring like a muffin?
I can't
Eat this.
Or can
I never
you?
asked for this.
Oh wait, what if it was for sheep stealer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I've
it's
got to
still
say,
a hell of a jump, though. Let's be honest. I mean, like if it's for sheep stealer, you would have think they would have started with like a deer, and then were they just low one year? And hey, by the way, here's the ear.
Yeah, We ran out of squirrel meat to give you.
It's the cherry on top of the elk. You just plop an ear on there.
Nice. Yes.
As one does.
Well, I gotta say, I'm glad, Isobel, that you brought up the like end of the post where there's a bunch of these other kind of ancillary witches or witch adjacents thrown out there, because Elchris does bring up Nymeria, who is like made in legend to be a witch, which shows up in book 1, but then also, that there's rumors about her being a witch. And since she ended up in Dorne, I suppose that would make her a sandwich.
Oh.
Whoa.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's
Banned.
Do we have a rim shot sound effect? That's at least
I will put one in.
That's the second time I feel like we've needed one, so we need a counter of some sort.
That's definitely. Oh, that's.
You
a
mean
good
you
note
have
for
like
me.
a whole mixing soundboard there, and you don't have a button for a rim shot? Come on, man.
I do it all in post. I do it all
Okay.
in post. Just pretend you heard a rim shot just now.
Wow, that was such a good sound effect.
Wow,
Thank you.
amazing.
Great
So
job.
crisp.
It's like you're the witch. You're a sound witch.
Sound.
The sound witcher.
Wow.
Oy.
So are we talking about this post now, or
Yeah, I mean, are there any more? Do you have some more thoughts on the witches?
is Merry Maesters not in the post?
I'm
I
That is
did
an
a text
oversight.
search and I didn't see it, and like I would think she would have been
she's
one of
a-
the main witches listed.
But she's a
think she's just, like,
professional
considered a witch
healer and she has Maester training.
She has a job.
Yeah, but if you look at the definition that they give about what a woods witch is, it's like a local traveling herb woman who uses traditional healing and has prophetic dreams. I mean, and if you look at like the history of like witchcraft in like Europe and things, that's what the women who were called witches were the ones who were like, oh yeah, I can birth babies and I've got some medicine, and they're like, well, you're too powerful, so we're gonna call you a witch. Like, that's Merry Maesters, right? Like. And
Yeah,
there
that's
there are
surprising.
definitely theories about what happened on the funeral pyre and whether the things that she was screaming had anything to do with Dany coming out of that unscathed and the dragons hatching and all of that. So,
Well, I mean, this isn't a list of all magical women. I mean, like, Melisandre's not a woods witch.
Mel is like given like a line, right? I
Yeah.
think that part of it is that I think part of what Elchris 24 wanted to do here is try to bring forward some of the witches that we don't necessarily see within the context of the story, though I guess Ghost of Highheart is on here, but trying to shine a light on some of the less noticed ones that are maybe more obscure in terms of woods witches.
I think
Yeah, I
think
guess
the
she's a
woods
woods
witches.
witch.
I think there's some kind of correlation with hedge knights. In that gender binary thing where I don't know what that means, but that they're sort of like on the periphery of the power structures, and they have some like special skills, but they're not like totally accepted. They can't just like roll up into court without some things happening to make that possible.
Yeah, it says here in the wiki that they're associated with hedge wizards, which is they say is like a hedge witch, but a wizard.
But
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying she should have been included on the list of woods witches, but she didn't even get a shout out at the end when they mentioned like Nymeria or Mel.
Did Mary make any sort of prophecies?
Yeah,
Sort of.
she told Dany that the whole when the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, and the
Well, there is contention as to whether or not that's a prophecy. But
Right.
Yeah, I thought that
Like
was
curse.
a very dramatic way of saying never.
Right. And then it like sort of became
how would we know that what Maggie the Frog said is true? Like,
Well, you know what's interesting too is that I'm glad you brought up the hedge wizards thing, because hedge wizard, we never meet any hedge wizards really in the series. They're just mentioned sometimes, and pretty much every time they come up in like a description of a scene, a hedge wizard is like someone who is like offering kind of shitty advice or is trying to pass off the head of like some other dwarf as Tyrion Lannister, or like is like a little independent businessman, whereas woods witches definitely seem to carry more like more weight. Like they generally seem associated more with like real magic, as opposed to like he's
They're not
just a
just
hedge
grifters.
wizard. He's
He's
like
the great and powerful Wizard of Oz, right? Like
yes, yeah, he's doing
Yeah.
little like shell game tricks and stuff.
It kind of sounds like I'm not sure if what the right word for this, but it almost sounds like a reference for green seers, like a hedge wizard, a green seer, kind of a similar sort of thing. Maybe a leftover thing for Andals who had disparaging names for everything related to the old gods in the First Men.
I don't know. At least on the, I didn't remember hearing the term hedge wizard, but from the few descriptions listed of instances in the books, it doesn't sound like hedge wizards actually have any sort of power, unlike green seers, who, when we see them or hear of them, they can genuinely do something. You know, Jojen really can see the future and make prophecies, whereas the hedge wizards, like we were just saying, don't do anything useful.
Right, and the Andals following the Faith of the Seven would be like, they don't think they do anything. They think they're just a bunch of weirdos in the woods chanting at trees and that kind of thing.
They're also nonconformists. They're people who aren't like going along with the plant the crops and bring them in and go out and plant some more. Like they're doing their own thing.
I see them more as like a binary to the Maesters, that you've got the woods witches who are informally trained, who are female, who are perhaps using magic or some kind of divination to help the local communities, as opposed to the Maesters, who are a very, ordered community, only male, professionally trained. They're serving the lords and things. They're not serving the small folk. So that's where I see the binary there. Then they're very like logically like anti-magic, except for Marwyn.
And they say Marwyn, don't they? They say he keeps company with hedge wizards, so it's like a pejorative.
Yeah, there is nothing that is more the opposite of like a cool spooky witch than a boring old dude who teaches like, I don't know, mathematics. Nothing against mathematics.
Wow.
I take that one back.
I mean, it could definitely be like if we're gonna get conspiratorial, right? I mean, I could see the Maesters running a sort of, not even like necessarily conscious campaign, but one that works to discredit hedge wizards, which would make sense because the hedge wizards would therefore end up sort of taking power away from the allure of having a maester, or the maesters themselves and their knowledge. Like, what's the point of going to the Citadel and getting like all this knowledge and trying to go through the whole fucking system, right, if you could just be a hedge wizard?
Are hedge wizards
Good point.
rejects from the Citadel?
Ooh, it's Halden Halfmaester a hedge wizard?
Maybe.
Ooh.
Are there woods witches who are women who refuse to go to the Silent Sisters?
We don't really know that much about them, to be honest. Almost none of them get a backstory other than Alice Rivers.
Yeah. Her backstory was so amazing, there's no room for any of the others.
She really crowds them out.
So, one of the great posts from the last month or so comes from Swampo Edgelord? No. As
Swamp
usual.
Ogre Lord, like Shrek.
Oh, there we go. Swamp Ogre Lord 2.
Swamp
And,
Ogre Lord too.
Swamp Ogre Lord 2, the man, the myth, and legend, who created a Westeros public transit map based on the books. And it's this really great map that accounts for different soils? That's not right. But in Dorne, it's red because obviously it's desert, and he has different lines going all throughout Westeros, and there's even a line that goes over the Bay of Ice, and it's from Deepwood Motte, and it's really well done. But I also have to say too that I'm from Pittsburgh and we don't really have a public transit system. So other than looking really, really nice, like the art he created is genuinely pretty. I can't really speak to its effectiveness as far as public transit systems go.
They included ferry services to Pike. That's so good. And like ferry services across Blackwater. And that's so cool.
There's even a ferry service to the prison island of Gaston Gray off the coast of Dorne, which I can only assume would be like Alcatraz or something in this. Like you go there, visit for a day, reenact scenes from The Rock.
I know. I just noticed there's a
Do some Connery accents.
There's a Tower of Joy stop, which seems
There is
like great from our perspective, but in world, it would just be like graves. Because didn't Ned say he built cairns out of the actual tower?
I think I will say, having ridden the DC Metro many times, I feel like there are stops that are basically the Tower of Joy, where like no one ever gets off. Well, I guess Rhaegar got off and Lyanna got off. But that's
Written shot.
There is an Arlington Cemetery stop, so
that's true. Yeah, and it's only the tourists who get off.
And I think that's what it is, right? You go to the Tower of Joy and you're like, all right, guys, this is where Rhaegar
where it all happened.
ran away with his mistress. Yeah.
I like the idea that there's like tour guides there and they're very ambiguous. It's like, well, what exactly happened here? We don't really know. Conflicting reports. Don't tell King Robert, though.
Yeah. Maybe they have people reenact it. They have reenactors for like
Don't
like
reenact
how
that.
well no, not that part. Reenacting the like the parts from Ned's fever dream. The now it begins. No, now it ends. Like, who doesn't want to watch that?
Well, the train like pulls into the station, and there's like a big fan blowing blue rose petals out like in front of the windows for
There's
effect.
just a bunch of
as
a
well.
whole
pages
industry.
shoveling them back into
Yeah, they've got these big snow shovels of blue roses.
There's an Arthur Dane with a very floppy Dawn that like is just made out of rubber.
Wait, what?
Floppy Dawn.
Yeah, a fake sword.
I like that it's called the King's Rail, the main line that runs up and down Westeros.
Oh, like the King's Road.
That's a nice
good.
touch.
I'm trying to imagine what the King's Landing station is like. I mean, I have some familiarity with the New York City Times Square station, and on one hand, I'm kind of picturing the King's Landing station where all the lines converge, being this just like complete maze of I'm doing staircase hands gestures and tunnels and all kinds of passageways like the Times Square station is. But maybe it's just all like in the Dragon Pit and they just repurposed the Dragon Pit as a transit stop.
Yeah, or I wonder if like the caches of wildfire get cleared out to make room for like.
Oh, can you imagine digging those tunnels and just finding the
There's a whole bunch of Italian immigrants who come over to like dig out the wildfire caches.
Hey Tony, found some wildfire over here.
Rest in peace to my great grandfather who died doing that in New York.
Oh no! I was like, man, too bad Jones Tony couldn't join us tonight.
Oh yeah,
His New York accent.
Speaking of Jones Tony, I'm kidding. He's not here.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen,
waiting for this exact joke.
That's right. No, it's so detailed and it's stylized just like all the distances are stylized just like you would see in a real transit map. Like, you're looking at this and you're like, oh, it's not that far from, I don't know, Storm's End to Evenfall Hall or whatever. I could take the ferry there, but
so there's a thing that happens with maps like this where the people who use the transit system and use the map end up kind of thinking of the geography matching the stylized map rather than the real geography. And if you did that with this map, you would think that like you would think that. Well, I'm looking to see. Yeah, you'd think that Winterfell was a lot closer to Moat Cailin and to Riverrun than it is on a to scale map.
Yeah, the neck looks a lot thicker.
It does.
And
It does.
easier to traverse.
But that helps. It helps the writer if you can visualize where the stops are in relationship to each other. So it's not. It's a map that's not going for scale accuracy, and I like that the. I like that this user recreated that about the transit maps. It's interesting that the twins is not a bottleneck on this map the way it is on land.
That is interesting.
So if you're a commuter, maybe you don't have to play the Mayhaps game with Walder Frey.
I mean, they must have been pretty
main
mad,
selling
right? Because
point.
the twins, they would have definitely, I'm sure, tried to get people to go through there and pay maybe another toll, right? If you're passing the north and you have to, I don't know, get a new ticket or add on.
Yeah.
So they just built the King's Rail around it. It was forget it.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you might have noticed at the bottom this is the Westeros Transit Authority (JSC) in cooperation with Lannister Finances. So this is clearly the Lannisters trying to get one over on the phrase. I mean,
that's why Casterly Rock is such a transit
been,
hub too. That makes sense.
Yeah, I've never been that interested in the alternate, what happens after a Game of Thrones or whatever. What's Westeros like in the future? But this is the one exception where I'm I want to see what's the who's commuting from Moat Cailin up to Winterfell because the property values in Moat Cailin are ridiculously cheap. And so it's worth the 2-hour train ride.
Do you
It's
think
all the crocodiles, man.
Do we think that dragons would be harnessed as power to dig these tunnels out, or is this post-dragon Westeros?
The
Post-dragons
would be better.
Oh. Or maybe Bran uses the roots of the weirwoods to crack open some
Bran
tunnels.
the train builder.
Wow.
Yes. Choo.
Can he build it?
Get on
Yes,
the hype
he
train.
Can. I do have one problem with this map.
What's your problem with this map?
I have a problem with this map that nobody's taken that ferry service to Pike. That is a wasted service.
Maybe
Nobody's getting on those boats. Nobody's going to the Iron Islands because if you don't come back,
maybe
I will
it's
say I'm
just a
surprised there's
monthly
2
ferry.
ferries.
Maybe it doesn't run very often.
it's like something out of a Lovecraft book where is it? Shadows over Innsmouth, where there's one bus that goes to Innsmouth and nobody's ever on it. That's basically what's going on here. Just get rid of the service.
Definitely.
Nobody's going.
It's interesting that there are 2 stops, right, on the Arbor. 3 stops. 3 stops on the Arbor.
Yeah.
Oh,
Vinetown.
Starfish Harbor. Is that canon? I don't remember Starfish Harbor.
These are all canon.
That's where you can find Patrick Star.
How's Star? Of course. I'm sorry.
Patrick Star, Shrek, Swamp Ogre Lord.
I feel like the 3 stops
Bobo sponges.
down there is like a vineyard tour, like a winery tour. That's where the bachelorette parties of Westeros go.
Oh my God! Yes.
So,
Yes.
which line? Which line do y'all think the Hogwarts train runs on? The really old-fashioned steam train.
Oh.
That's got to be the Vale. That has to be the Vale.
Yes.
Yeah, chugging up around the mountain passes.
The
Maybe
birdmen
they have
show up. Throw
maybe they have
ears.
a cog railway like they have in Wales going up to Snowdon, where it's the grade is so steep that normal trains can't go up it. So they have this cool cog system that the train kind of goes on these gear shaped wheels up the mountain.
Oh.
That'd be amazing.
It's
for
a
the
little
Vale.
terrifying. Or I guess they could just have cable cars. That would probably be easier. But
Oh, true. Yeah, like a funicular system. No one.
is that what that's called?
No, not cable cars like you're talking about, I don't think. Unless you mean the ones that go up and down a mountain. The inclines.
Yeah.
Yeah, a funicular. And I only know that because I live in Pittsburgh.
And you said you didn't know
That's
anything
right.
about transportation.
I had
Is
no
that
idea.
is that the thing in the air?
No, not in the air. It's like so one car goes down and one car goes up. And it's on a
I've
giant
been on it.
The incline? Yeah. There's two of them, at
I
least
think
right
so.
now. If you've done a touristy thing in Pittsburgh, you probably have.
I will say, I think it's interesting that they bothered to build a ferry service out to the Isle of Skagos.
Again, who's going
You
there?
know, it's optimistic.
What-
Yeah,
but what if it's
I
not-
think.
What if it's not like boats? What if it's unicorns?
You ride unicorns?
Oh, there we go.
That's a ferry.
There we
Wait,
go.
can unicorns swim?
I know. I'm picturing Pegasuses, but you know.
But I mean, it's not just for people to visit Skagos, right? Like again, it's the commuters, right?
Yeah.
Someone from
Yeah.
Skagos coming in, someone who lives on Skagos coming into Winterfell, right, to go or whatever work, and then goes
Right.
back home, or maybe it doesn't run frequently, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe someone's going to Skagos / Eastwatch, watching whatever's going on. Because
This is what I'm talking about. This is the fan fiction I need. Is like the who are the commuters of Westeros, and where they like
Shrek.
are they like little commuter hotels that you stay in on the mainland, and then
Actually,
I need it.
I think there's a big problem with the North in this one. Clearly, White Harbor would be the financial hub, and yet that does not seem to be the main hub of all the rails.
right.
Where is?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Everything should be going through White Harbor.
No,
Really
you're
should
right.
be.
They should be.
Yeah.
But
Come on.
the reason why is because if this is in cooperation with Lannister finances, then they wouldn't want too many people going to White Harbor because that's a competitor.
Yeah. It's that.
Oh.
It's that. But and then like the Boltons have their own line. That line running from White Harbor on the east side.
Oh, you do not want to get on that train.
Nobody gets on that
Do
one.
not
I'll
get on the
tell
Bolton
you.
line.
The Flayed Man Express.
Oh no.
Oh man.
Rather be delayed than be flayed. That's the saying people say about avoiding that line. That'll be the little urban legend.
Oh my goodness.
So the next post is actually a conversation as part of a post that was made by Frank Walsingham, and it was the most unintentionally funny line in the book. The actual funny line is, Jon felt 15 years old again. Jon Snow, 16 years old. So this kind of like this the kids reflecting on their ages all the time, like thinking about that they're older than they feel or that they should be acting, older than they are, brought up this line in, well, the comment is from Robert Rivers, and they said, early in Game of Thrones, Ned is talking to Kat and says something along the lines of, Rickon needs to stop acting like a child. He'll be 4 soon. I had to look it up because I wanted to make sure. I was like, yeah, I think that's in the book. I think it's in the first Kat chapter. And it's when Kat goes to have the conversation with Ned in the Weirwood, in the Godswood. And, he's asking about how the kids are doing with their direwolf pups. And Arya's already in love. Sansa is charmed and gracious, but Rickon's not quite sure. Is he afraid? Ned asked. A little, she admitted. He's only 3. Ned frowned. He must learn to face his fears. He will not be 3 forever, and winter is coming. I love the exposition and like the introduction of all this stuff in the early chapters because you feel like it's so cliched, like winter is coming.
Yeah.
Yes, Catelyn agreed. The words gave her a chill as they always did. The Stark words. Every noble house had its words, right? It's like, we know all this. Why are you telling me? But anyway, so it started this discussion about, Bran thinking that he's nearly a man grown when he's age 7, that he needs to act like the Lord of the Castle because he's nearly a man. ARS 8 Birds responds that they want to insert themselves into the book and yell at Ned for the comment, talking about how a lot of the characters had to assume responsibility when they were at very young ages. Like with Kat, her mom died giving birth to her brother, right? Is that so? She was like 7 or 8, and suddenly she is the Lady of Riverrun. And so, you know, is she imposing that on Arya when she wants Arya to be more grown up, act more grown up and ladylike than she is? Is she thinking back to her own childhood, right? When she encounters Robert Arryn in the Eyrie, and she sees how young he acts and how horribly unprepared he is to be a boy lord, is she thinking about how she had to take over the castle when she was that age? So it was an interesting conversation about, you know, the ages of the Stark children especially, and how old they are, thinking about our modern ages, but then also how old they are in terms of the responsibilities that they have in the story.
Something I thought of after hearing reading the comment about Ned and Kat losing their parents is that I wonder if that is one of the things that sort of brought them together, because they had such a happy marriage. It just made me it's something I had never considered before reading that both of them knew what it was like to lose a parent unexpectedly.
And young too, like the way that responsibility gets foisted onto both of them as the firstborn. Or, well, sorry, not Ned as the firstborn, but as the one who like ends up assuming that responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
that does definitely color their expectations for kids.
A lot of the discussion we have on the subreddit is about like the prophecies and the futures and the battles and the succession fight. But these quotations really pull out how much the story is built around these coming of age stories, and kind of right out of the gate, the parents are saying, it's time, they got to get together, they got to get it together, they got to grow up, and without understanding anything about what these kids are going to go through for their coming of age.
I almost wonder if this is kind of like meta on George's part, because he said in the past that he is unhappy with how young he made the kids. And maybe like in retrospect, he went back and like, I really should have made them older, but like the die is cast sort of thing. Like that was a big problem with the 5-year gap, is that he was like, I am so tired of writing kids' POVs. I want them to be adults so I can think like them. Mm-hmm. But as a result, he ends up putting quite a lot of responsibility on them that is like totally unrealistic.
Well, and lines like he won't be 3 forever or Bran's nearly a man grown at 7, they hit a little different if you think that over the course of the story they are going to age like 10 years or whatever. Like if Rickon truly won't be 3 forever, but the thing is, he's been like 3 to 5 for like 30 years. So it does seem a little ridiculous. But yeah, like if you're early George and you're thinking, well, yeah, these kids are young, but yeah, they'll be teenagers by the, or adults, young adults, whatever. Yeah, it might strike a little differently.
And the 5-year gap was in and of itself a band-aid over the fact that, as you were saying, right, George kind of thought that the characters were going to age faster, even within the context of the story. He thought that time would pass faster. That could be part of why, like, Bran at 7, Ned saying he's almost a man grown. Same with Rickon. And even, I actually highly disagree with that. I really don't think that this is actually accurate for the medieval mindset either. I know people will argue that this is reflective of the values of the medieval society, and if you do the research, it actually isn't. There is, in fact, a concept of childhood, and there isn't a concept of adolescence per se, but there is a concept of childhood and what it means in terms of development, and regardless of the responsibilities that are placed on children, right? It doesn't change the science. Children's brains develop within a certain way, regardless of time or age. Humans haven't changed that much since over the past few centuries, but
I mean, if anything, it would be slower in the Middle Ages.
Exactly. Yeah, there's less stimuli perhaps to jumpstart that. There's not nutrition, really
nutrition
codified. Nutrition, codified literacy, things like that. But it kind of almost could feel like foreshadowing in terms of how the story actually goes and what happens with Bran's story. Like perhaps George thought that Bran would age up faster, but soon after, right, within the second book, or by the second book, Bran is in charge of Winterfell, right? You don't expect a 7/8 or 9-year-old. I think he's probably 8 at the time of A Clash of Kings, but he's now the Lord of Winterfell, and he's like, shit, I'm holding a feast, all right? I don't know, give the thing to that person. And it's the exact same situation that Catelyn found herself in to an extent, though at least she had Hoster Tully there, and Bran's like, I don't know, I got Hodor, and I got Maester Lewin, and Rickon?
And some wildling chick.
Got a couple wolves.
Yeah, and I got a dog, and these are my advisors, and the strangers from the neck, one who thinks he knows the future, oh shit, he does, do I know the future? And then the fate of the world is in his hands. So it almost feels like not like an omen from Ned, but in a way foreshadowing, even though you're like, wow, when you think about it, you're like, that's fucking ridiculous. Like, children shouldn't have this weight on their shoulders, and as Isobel was saying, it's a coming-of-age story, and that's what a lot of the kids in the story have to deal with.
Yeah, no, I could say a lot about child development and, like, Arya. And the things that she does and thinks about as like a 9-year-old that are just not going to resolve the way a lot of people wish that they would resolve if like she were a real 9-year-old without her being like a psychopath. Yeah, and I mean, I think some of it is because George is such a gardener, and so he doesn't have that endpoint anchored down to where he can work his way backward to know like how old they should be when it starts. And I think some of it is just that he's so bad with numbers that like he just really can't conceptualize a 100-foot wall or a 7-year-old child. Yeah.
Well, on that, you know what though? On that point, that's something I wanted to bring up is that. And I don't, this isn't an implication of anything one way or the other, but that George doesn't have kids, and so he hasn't seen that firsthand. And not that and I'm not saying you can't write a book or a story if you've never experienced it, but in this case, it really does seem to have affected his point of view with how the characters act. And I'm remembering an old So Spake Martin from the early 2000s, maybe, where someone wrote into him back when he used to answer emails and chats or whatever, and they were talking about feeding a newborn goat's milk. And I really just need to bring this up but the end result of it was that George was writing back to the woman who had written in saying, oh, wow, I had no idea you could do that. And I'd really like to talk to you more about like what a newborn baby would eat in the absence of its mother. And it was an interesting point, I guess, because it seems like there are some things that we sort of assume he's doing for a reason or a meta reason or it's foreshadowing, and maybe it is, but maybe it's also just because he didn't really know and didn't really think about it.
Yeah, I agree a lot, and it can feel a lot of times like what George is doing to portray immaturity is to show us what the young character doesn't know without necessarily having put the work into showing us what that young character can or can't do.
I thought one example that sticks out is the when Bran sees Jaime and Cersei and George goes to the old trope, oh, well, they're wrestling. There's some weird wrestling going on in there. And it's like, I don't know about that one, but that's certainly a popular fiction trope that you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess you can forgive some of the inconsistencies, and even between children in the book, because I mean, kids are different, right? Like every 8-year-old is not going to have the same competencies. Some of them are going to be Robert Aaron, and some of them are going to be Cat running River Run, right? Like,
True.
So not every 8-year-old is going to be. Is gonna realize that they're not wrestling.
Yeah, and I do think that's a good point that you raise by bringing up Robert Aaron, who's brought up later on as well, right? By R's 8 Birds.
Yeah.
R's 8 Birds, and you do get then a sense of being able to compare Robert, Aaron, and Bran and the way that each of their parents have prepared them, right? Like, Bran has been thrust into this position, and so has Robert Aaron very much, but Bran's parents were, and we can also read it to an extent, right? If they're informed by Kat losing her parents, and as you said, Ned losing his parents early on, like this sort of trauma-informed parenting that has led to Bran being like way more prepared for this than Robert Aaron, who's like, I don't know, and therefore being taken advantage of by the people around him.
There's also something interesting there at that age that Bran and Robin are at, that that's when children are fostered to other highborn families, when especially male children like to become squires and things. And there's some of that in the books too, where like Kat really doesn't want Bran to go south, but he's really the right age that he really should be, and Lysa doesn't want Robin to go anywhere. But this actually is the age that they would send. Not, I don't know necessarily, like, I mean, it depends on the family and what rank you are. Like, you wouldn't want to send your heir away necessarily, or not too far. But, that was a big part of alliances and things in the feudal period.
Yeah, how old was Ned when he was fostered? Do we know, kind of ballparkish? I mean, I know he was young. Because obviously he and Robert had their like formative middle school and high school years together.
Yeah, I would think it would be around that 8 or 9.
Yeah, but I don't know.
That would make sense.
Yeah. I don't know that we've ever...
Oh, yeah, okay. No, it's on the wiki. Was fostered from the age of 8 at the Eyrie. So yeah, literally right then. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder... I mean, and obviously this is all coming from George, so it's not like it's a world that exists independently of the author, but I wonder the extent to which like Westerosi parents, if there's like a like skip a generation kind of cycle where it's like you foster your kid and then that kid grows up and is like more precious maybe about having their hands on their kid, and then the next generation is more like willing to give to like let them get out of the nest or whatever. Like I wonder if it's that kind of generation skipping type thing.
I mean, Doran fosters out Quentin Martell, and I think for me it still comes back to both Ned and Lysa, very much both again having trauma in their background as affecting their willingness to let their children be fostered, because Ned's like, it's too soon. He's like, it's too soon, and Catelyn's like, it's really not. Ned's like, I mean, his entire family, right? Yeah. They were split apart, and they all fell apart, and they all died, and now here he is. He feels very alone, and like, he's responsible for his family's legacy, whereas Lysa was going to have a child that she chose to want to keep. And that abortion was forced on her without her knowledge. It was unconsensual, right? And so this time she really treasures this child that she's finally been able to have. And that's something that she can have agency over at the expense of her own son's agency.
Well, and on top of Lysa's trauma, not only did she have the forced abortion of Littlefinger's child, after she married John Arryn, she had miscarriages and stillbirths. I mean, she had so many that it makes sense that she would be traumatized and would cling that more tightly to the only child that she has that survived.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. We don't always discuss it, but like miscarriages can be, I mean, they're really big events, or really painful events for many people.
And Lysa wasn't wrong to be skeptical of the houses that were offering to take her child away. Like,
true.
Yeah.
Just send him right over to Tywin.
No, yeah.
Not wrong.
Mm-hmm. You're not paranoid if they're actually out to get you.
Nope.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah, right. It's interesting too, like the way like duty and that trauma kind of intertwine, especially with Lysa. I realize we are like miles away from the original comment, but when it comes to Lysa, like, there's this. She experiences a ton of trauma and is also undergoing the like just inherent pressure of being a noblewoman whose duty it is to have a son, like to have a male heir, or to produce the male heir. And so, but yeah, I mean, it all compounds, right? It's all these things like stacked up on top of each other, because not only has she experienced all this trauma, but also now she like is extra compelled to feel that she needs to safeguard this male heir, because that, as a noblewoman is what she's supposed to give to the world.
Right.
Is there some
that's fucked.
early on about like Cersei wants Jaime Lannister to be Warden of the East?
Yeah.
And so again, Lysa's totally right to not let Robin get hauled away to Casterly Rock. Like when Cersei's angling to put Jaime Lannister in charge. Anyway. Yeah. Lysa Arryn did nothing wrong.
except that one thing.
Yeah, except the one
That's
thing.
the official Maester Monthly.
The one thing named Robin, yeah.
No, murdering. I thought it was murdering her husband. Isn't that the one thing?
Except for that.
Yeah,
There's a couple
would
things. And starting the War of the Five Kings.
No, she did nothing wrong. What's so complicated about this?
There were a few things.
Before we move off of this topic, so I looked up the So Spake Martin from a couple of minutes ago, and I just want to just draw attention to it because it illustrates how little I feel like George knew about babies and kids and whatever. So the person writing in, this is in June 2003, the person writing in says, I love your books and I would be glad to answer any questions you might have about birth or breastfeeding. And George says, I'll take you up on that. And he says, in a medieval setting like mine, if neither the mother nor a wet nurse is available to feed an infant, what sort of milk would be best for the child? Cow's milk? Goat's milk? Mare's milk? Could anything be added to it to make it more nourishing and a better substitute for human breast milk? At what age can solid food be added? And what sort of solid food should it be in a world before Gerbers? I know honey can kill infants, but I don't know what's good for them. Porridge? Mashed turnips? Stewed something or other? Stewed fruit sounds as though it might be an idea, but they don't have a lot of fresh fruits on the wall right now with winter almost upon them. Any info you can provide would be appreciated. And I don't even know what to say because I feel like in 2003 Google existed and there are...
Yes.
And speaking as someone who, when pregnant, went through all of the deluge of information about what you should feed a baby and not feed a baby and whatever, there's a lot of resources out there. So the fact that he's having this conversation with a fan who wrote in it speaks to a lot of information that he didn't have when writing some of these characters, I think.
I will certainly say, I mean, he's read a ton of books about, jousting and shit. You'd think he could crack open like a Dr. Oz or whatever. What is it?
Not Dr. Oz.
Is that the guy?
No, I don't know.
Dr. Spock. Oh my God.
Never
Yeah, I got him
Dr. Oz.
mixed up.
Not Dr.
Yeah.
Oz. Yeah,
Well, never
Dr.
really
Oz.
Dr. Spock either.
what's that guy's name? I had like his entire whatever.
One of them baby
Dr.
books.
Sears.
No, but I mean, yeah, like
There's a lot.
Dr. Sears, maybe.
It does. I think that's a really good observation. It does speak to the research that he does because he loves it and because it's his hobby, and then the research that he does because he's like, fuck, what do babies eat?
I mean, I will say that George has written quite enough about lactation in certain contexts that I do think he should have done some research on this. I will say that he has written about that, not in the context that you would necessarily think it would be.
Right, yeah, he's missing the nutritional side of things, I think. Is what you're
babies
saying.
and kids really do not interest him.
And yet he keeps writing about them.
I will point out Two things. One, our intro question that we thankfully changed was almost, who was your favorite A Song of Ice and Fire, baby?
We should have added, and what would you feed them?
Yeah, and then we were like, wait, well, how come there is no compiled list of these Song of Ice and Fire babies? So that was in an alternate universe, that was our intro.
I don't know that was a huge mystery as to why there's not a compiled list already. The way, I just want to be clear, because you made it sound like it was a really huge question for us. My God, this is an oversight. We need to get on this immediately.
It is an oversight. How is
There
it
should
not?
definitely be like wikioficeandfire.com/category : babies. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, there's
I
a
do
list
think
of
so.
a list of Valyrian steel swords. There needs to be a list of babies.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I guess, if one of us wanted to be the change that we want to see in the world, and it's not me today,
We want to go baby on baby. That's what you're
Very
saying.
smoothly passing that off.
that is not me today, not today. And I will say that a good
Or
rebuttal
maybe
to
a
all the
comparison post of how babies are like Valyrian swords.
which baby should inherit which Valyrian sword based solely on personality.
Or which Valyrian steel swords are named after babies?
Lady Forlorn.
Ice? Widow's Whale.
Ice baby. Oh my
Heartsbane,
God.
sorry. Red
Yes.
Rain? I don't know.
Oh, God.
That's horror. That one's sad.
Yikes.
There is a non-zero amount of babies that have been killed by Valyrian steel swords. We all know it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Coming back to the post and the ages, I will say that a nice rebuttal to it does come in a Clash of Kings where soon after, right, where Myrcella says to Joffrey, like, we're children, we're supposed to be childish, and I do like that does get acknowledged at one point. And I mean, like, I know it's a silly line in the OP, but it does feel very true of being a teenager.
You know
yes.
you know who's the most accurate child ruler in the whole series?
Who?
Tommen.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I want to play with my kitty cats, and I want to outlaw beats, and I will stamp whatever you ask me to stamp as long as I can go play with my wooden sword in the yard. Now, please.
Yeah.
Like, he is 8.
There's something about that
absolutely.
crown that really unlocks the child personality in George's writing.
Yeah, I mean, he really digs
That's
into it more in Fire
interesting.
and Blood, so.
Crowns make children of us all. So,
Wow.
I'm trying to get pithy about it. Yeah. You're wise.
We need that sound effect again.
What sound? Which one?
The one of you bricking a basketball.
What is that?
like a buzzer sound, or like
Yeah.
okay,
Or whatever
I'll
the one
work
was
on
from the
that.
beginning. What were you talking about? It's like
rim shot.
the rim shot. Yeah, need a rim shot sound right there.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was basketball.
No, rim shot.
I thought you.
Okay.
It's like
Why
a,
did
the
I think
rim of a
basketball with
drum.
this group? Why did I think that?
Why would we know about basketball, Matt?
I'm an idiot.
Is it because you
That's
wanted
right.
to talk about Dunkin' Egg?
A little. Is that the next one?
That was admirable. I can't even.
Flawless.
Sorry, Michael, I
From
stole your
half
thunder.
That was amazing.
That's a horse in that series too. Thunder.
Oh, get it! Get the.
Come back! Don't leave!
Speaking of Dunkin' Egg, my favorite subject in the world, George, keep writing Dunkin' Egg. Don't finish A Song of Ice and Fire. I love you. This post here by Silverback Brorilla? Brorilla. Okay. Title, Spoilers Main, Dunkin' Egg Predictions and Theories. The old Brorilla here has quite a rundown of different tinfoil theories and ideas they want to express about what's going to happen at the end of the Dunkin' Egg story, which, spoiler alert, does end with them dying horrifically in flames screaming. That is a little bit of a come down, but that's how it goes with George. He makes you like characters, then he burns them alive in a horrific accident. Anyway.
He giveth and he taketh away.
Yeah. Some of the theories they wanted to talk about was the idea of Dunk the Lunk as thick of as a castle wall. And there's this long-standing theory in the fandom that Dunk will be somehow integral to saving Rhaella and Rhaegar from the flames, as well as some members of the royal family. Some people think it will be his boot because it's mentioned in the Hedge Knight, I think.
Yeah, Hedge Knight.
The idea that his foot is worth a prince's life or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little hints about it, and essentially it gets down to the idea that when you compare Dunk with some of his supposed ancestors and a lot of the lines early on with George's style, that we're leading up to a horrific Summerhall story, if we ever get it, where he's in a position to have to either save the royal family or have to defy Egg in some way to protect them from the out-of-control wildfire, however it started. But it ended up becoming more of a post, sort of a general overall theory thing, like, why do you think Summerhall exploded? How did it go down? Did Dunk save them? What kind of things? What are the outcomes you want to see or do you hope to see? And obviously I'm all over this post because I love Dunk and Egg and I love Summerhall and thinking about, I have my own theories about it, but there's quite a lot of others. Which ones do you guys favor? What do you think happened at Summerhall?
I gotta say my favorite thing from the OP that I mean, if I've seen it, I forgot about it. Because my brain is Swiss cheese, but the thing where Egg continually shouts, oh, get him, sir, get him, he's right there. In all fight scenes, I really love the idea that those are Egg's last words, and he's telling Dunk to get Jaehaerys out of Summerhall. Like, get him. Like, I'm getting goosebumps right now just saying that. Like, that would be, God. That's all I gotta say. I mean,
these mantras, like, there's something about them that reminds me of the way the Hodor mystery plays out, where like the answer is in his name, and because like I was tempted to be like, oh, this is tinfoil, but there's something about it that kind of it rhymes. I like it.
Yeah, I agree with the foot thing. Like, I don't know what Dunk's foot will do, but George drew too much attention to it not to be important. Like you were saying, Isobel, like Hodor, it seems like it can't not be. There can't not be something that comes back to that. It just seems like too much of an important line to be just a throwaway.
I think the Hodor comparison's a really good one, because that is one of the best demonstrations we have of how George might hide like a long-term thing that he's thinking about. And the way he hides it is just by like sticking it in there, and like when you get it, you get it. Like it's not something you can necessarily predict except by accident, because the circumstances of how it comes back are so specific. But that, the chills you get when you realize why he says Hodor are the same chills that I think I would get if Egg's last words are "get him, sir," or if, Dunk, the last time we see Dunk, he's like kicking down a door in Summerhall with the foot that, like all these kind of these deep cut throwbacks that are popping up all over this thread. I mean, all of those are ones that would give you chills, and you can't necessarily predict it, but it's going to hit somehow.
One of the users in the thread, Zerped, speculates, yes, but does Dunk give Egg one last clout on the ear before his death?
Oh. He's like, you dunce, why'd you hatch them dragons?
You big dummy. Oh, gotcha.
You big doo-doo head. Yeah.
I feel like I'm one of the very few people in the world, perhaps in denial, that Egg was doing something nefarious. Like, I think there was some sort of accident. Like, it would have been okay except for something. Like, someone else did the bad thing. And I feel like that's having too much faith in a happy or hopeful ending than George has demonstrated to us repeatedly is not going to happen.
Yeah, one of the things that got brought up in this thread, I'm actually one of the people that wrote one of the popular theories about how this will go badly and how it's going to be Egg's fault. And one of the things I cling to as to why it feels right, even more than like the evidence I found, and that is the idea that when you compare Egg with like Arian Brightflame and you compare him with Ares, there's these weird connections between them of these kind of self-owns that happen, where it's the pursuit of prophecy and the pursuit of dragons, the pursuit of power is something you see echo throughout so many of his characters. And then when you hear that Egg was trying to restore the dragons in order to essentially, he was morally trying to help the kingdoms, but to everyone else it looked like he was going to bring back the rule of Dragonfire. And that would be the kind of thing George would show us as a tragic downfall of a character who was trying to do something they felt was right, but everyone else saw it very differently and ended up being their downfall. Kind of like in the current story, that's a story that's happening very much to Stannis.
Yeah, and I like that because I think that it's a question that's raised amongst the Targaryens, right? I don't necessarily, in Daenerys' chapter, she asks how far is I don't have the line verbatim, but it's like, how far is the distance between madness and greatness? What's so different between it? And, the intent between both it matters greatly for Aerion. He wanted to be a dragon, perhaps, to gain his own personal power, but it sounds like something could be happening in Egg's storyline. We know that he has a lot of issues with trying to get a lot of the more powerful lords on his side, because Egg is very much interested in the plight of the lower class in Westeros. So, I think that makes a lot of sense. A part of what I like, and this is kind of simple, but part of what I like about this theory is, on one hand, it's a great catch that this is something that's being established about Egg's character growing up. So in one way, how are we going to see this same line manifest throughout the other Dunk and Egg stories? What other skirmishes is Dunk going to get into where Egg's got to be like, get him, sir, get him, he's right there. But also, it kind of feels like in the same way that Egg might be trying to do that, like it feels like a gut punch, It's like, if you see that line one more time in that context, it feels like it's punching into you and just ripping your heart out. And I'm like, no, everyone, why?
Doesn't that feel like Gurm?
That does.
Mm-hmm. Our hearts in conflict with themselves.
Would that be considered bittersweet?
Yes, very much so. One thing I wanted to bring up too, you guys were talking about how George likes to plant very early on simple things that end up being important. There was a post I don't think we're going to talk about, but somebody brought up that Daniel Abraham, writer of The Expanse, but also wrote the comic books for George, revealed that, I forget what the context was, but essentially he knows the end of the story because he tried to cut a line from one of the comic books, and George told him, no, you have to go back and put it back in. It's very important for like the last scene or the very ending of the book. And Abraham commented, was like, oh, that's really innocuous. That like, this is what it is. And he's like, yeah, you have to go back and put it in. Which has launched like a ton of people trying to track down what has been preserved versus the first comic book versus the first book. But it's the same kind of repeating pattern that George loves the idea of burying his twists and his endings in simplicity, and something that will resonate with his readers when they see it again.
Well, and I think too, it's a talent that he has for combining that with his gardening style. Where I think he's good at, like a great dungeon master. He's good at like generating these lines or these mantras or whatever it is, these hooks that he may not actually know exactly how it's going to pay off, but he's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have Egg keep saying this thing, and I'm going to bring it back. Like that's going to come in at the end here. Or whatever it is. I think he has a really good instinct as an author for creating those and sowing those seeds, and then being able to continue using them and all that, and to the point where it almost doesn't matter how much he's planned it, because that is, I think, a genuine like strong point of George's writing.
That's why we're all sitting here going crazy reading through the books, trying to figure out, is this something that he intentionally put in here, or is this something that he just really doesn't understand? And then he just made up something, and now we're trying to give it significance.
Okay, give me a second to segue here. Speaking of twists that have been like waiting for 10 years or more, here's a post about Leighton Hightower, who's been sitting in the top of the high tower for about 10 years or so. This is a post, another one by LChris24, Best of 2019 Crow of the Year. And this is basically just breaking down why Leighton Hightower, the lord of a greatish house, Hightower, would remain at the top of his titular high tower for like a decade and basically just drop out of politics and drop out of society. There's a couple
really
explanations.
Identifying with him right now?
Yeah, actually, I'm getting it. Yeah. He's onto something.
We surely are all Leighton Hightower.
Whoa!
Oh, man. Well, Professor Leighton, there's a couple possibilities for Professor Leighton's Hightower adventure here. One big suggestion is that he could have a glass candle or some other type of magic / vision that he's, obsessed with.
Netflix.
Much like Netflix, yes. He finally signed up for Disney Plus, and he's going through the Disney Vault and, watching the Black Cauldron. World building. I included as a possible explanation is just world building, just that George R. R. Martin liked the idea of a dude up in a tower. Also a suggestion about Maggie the Frog being involved, a suggestion that he may not be up there at all. This is some sort of cover story. And then there's a few little index at the end with a couple other events that happened around the time he dropped out, including some births, like Jon, Daenerys, Jojen, Sansa, Edric, Dane, Arya, and Bran are all kind of within this range of when he may have disappeared. Gyrion Lannister disappearing after heading to Valyria. There even included the marriage pact in Braavos between Viserys and Arianne, which again would have happened around this time. But yeah, so this is definitely something I have not actually seen any speculation on why he's up there, other than just like, oh, he's just up there hanging out. So I think this is an interesting idea to really kind of look for why what he could be doing up there, assuming of course that he is still up there. Was there anything from this that like jumped out to you guys as, oh my God, that's what crazy Leighton's been up to?
There is one detail about the glass candles. I did a stream recently. I'm not actually sure where we're going to release this, so recently will be in air quotes, where I was talking about glass candles, and it's noted the Citadel brought back the 4 glass candles, but there's only 3 that we see in the Citadel. So people have wondered if this special green one has been gifted to Lord Hightower or he acquired it somehow, especially since when you talk about the Dance of the Dragons, it was the blacks versus the greens. So maybe some sort of resonance there if you're looking for it.
I think this is Westeros-style weekend at Leighton's. And he's not up there anymore.
Do you think he's like dead, or do you think he's like on a beach somewhere wearing sunglasses, like with a little bit of zinc on his nose?
Oh, maybe both. Yeah.
His corpse
for him.
is on the beach.
Good for him.
Gone fishing is what's on his door at the top of the...
I don't think this is what he's doing up there, but I just like the header. He's not actually up there. It's just funny to me.
It would be extremely funny if like they all rush to the top of the high tower to meet with him, and there's just like they open the door and there's just like a note on his desk that's like left.
It's like a movie with Matthew Broderick where he puts the dummy in the bed.
Ferris Bueller?
Yeah,
Ferris
Ferris
Bueller.
Bueller.
Thank
Day
you.
off.
It's Leighton Hightower's day off.
Day off.
And he's put the dummy in the bed, and he is off. Yes, at the art museum.
Yeah, he's like stuffed a broom under the sheets of his bed.
Yeah.
And so
And the Maester keeps trying to like get in, but the dog is like chewing on his ankle.
I mean, I think it's interesting, like in this quote that El Chris has put in here, it's talking about his kids, right? Like, Baylor's building galleys, Gunthor's in charge of the harbor, Garth is training new recruits, Humphrey's gone to Lys to see his sister. Like, they're all off doing stuff. And, like, wouldn't it be funny if Leighton Hightower were actually also off doing stuff, but, like, his cover is that he's up in this tower?
Yeah. I mean, it could be. Like, people have been saying, well, I think it's interesting, Melora was not included. I guess she's not technically a woods witch. She's in, like, the High Tower and is probably one of the richest people ever in Westeros, so maybe that's why. Bougie-ass witch. Anyways, yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna go really tinfoil, if he's not up there, he could be. Maybe he's glamored and running around. He could be Marwyn. We're gonna just plant random seeds, see what sprouts from it. I'm just shooting off the cuff right now.
I was actually thinking about this. Like, what if he's actually in the Citadel as like a fake Archmaester, and they all know it's Leighton, and everyone just pretends that he's like one of them? It's like, yeah, sure, Archmaester Leighton of the, I don't know,
Archmaester Schmaten. Yeah.
Of the low
Segways.
basement.
He's the Archmaester of Segways.
Low cellar.
Yeah, and it's just
Leighton
like,
low cellar.
everyone gives it a wink and a nod, and they let him go about his business. It's like, this keeps him out of our hair. Just let him continue pretending he's a maester.
I mean, Alaris gets away with it. So
Well,
Okay.
so I was... Go ahead.
Oh, another thing it reminds me of. So I'm interested in genealogy as a hobby, and I stumbled across this census, the census report, looking for one of my ancestors. And in the census, they record the occupation of the resident all the way back in the 19th century when it was taken, and it's always like farmer, merchant, farmer, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whatever. And there's this one entry that I remember spotting, and there's this guy, and he says that, and the census taker wrote down in the U.S. Census, keeping watch for his enemies.
Was this
Or
in
like
Kentucky?
this guy
by
who's
any
like the grandpa in the house, and I wonder what he was doing all day. I wonder how they persuaded the census taker to write that down.
Did he write it while running away from?
Yeah, I was gonna say
very
he
angry
was the
grandfather?
census taker was the enemy.
Whoa.
What a
I need to
legend.
edit my census form.
Everybody fill out your census.
Plotting the demise of my
I mean, it could. I feel like Leighton could just be like that kind of a guy. Like he could just be this kooky dude who is keeping watch for his enemies from the top of the high tower for like 10 years. Because I don't know, he had a bad dream once or something, and now he's like, the Ironborn, and maybe he'll be right accidentally or whatever.
He walked all the way up to the top of the tower. He's not coming back down now.
That's true.
It's a lot of
Walk
stairs.
So
back up all
true.
those steps again. No, but I was
Just
looking
because
for
he's keeping watch
context.
for his enemies doesn't mean they're not coming.
I was speaking of genealogy. I was looking for context, and I'm like, how many kids does this guy have? Well, so his daughter that's in Lys is Jorah Mormont's ex-wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's the grandfather of the Tyrell kids,
Yes.
Silas, Garland, Loras, and Marjorie.
Huh.
Yeah, he's like tied into a lot of this. I mean,
Yeah.
Great grandfather,
And the red wines and the Fossaways and the... no, because it's Leighton to Aelary, who's Mace Tyrell's wife.
Yeah.
So it's Mace's
Okay,
wife's
I see. I got it.
yeah.
father. Yeah.
I mean, I do think we're going to find out what happens to what happened to Leighton one day, because I think that the High Towers, George has like built in a lot behind them in Fire and Blood. Granted, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like, we're probably not going to see, I don't know, House Beesbury come to the forefront. Though I love House
dare you.
Beesbury, and I think that we should. It's my personal take. But, we have all of these characters that are very intriguing, and the Reach is going to play a big deal. And I kind of hope we're going to see Lyness again, as Dany makes her way back west, stops through the Free Cities. I hope we run into Liness, and apparently Humphrey Hightower has been, I think, trying to meet with Liness, and it might have to do with trying to get a fleet, which could be important for them, so...
I've got two possibilities we haven't brought up. Number one, this is tied into the number of kids. Maybe there's just too many Hightowers around, and he's just sick of them. So he's like, screw my kids. I can't go anywhere without, like, stepping on one of these. Like, they just get in my way. So I'm going up in the high tower. You guys handle everything. I'm done, like a cranky old man. Yeah. And then the second possibility, we talked about this earlier. Maybe he's just like Tommen, and he just likes playing with his kitties. And he's just, because, like, you know, with like the Hightowers, with their history and their power, you sort of have this idea that Leighton sort of fits into this legacy of powerful, intelligent rulers who's controlling everything. But maybe he's not. Maybe he's just like, he just likes sitting up there reading his favorite fiction books, like some people I know, playing with his cats and just having a good time.
He's got like a model train set or something up there.
Yeah.
It's just,
Oh, model trains. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yes.
Trains.
He is absolutely.
Oh my
model
God, did
train
he draw
guy.
the map?
I think
Yes.
so. I think he did.
Speaking of trains, like there's this kind of rhyming between Leighton Hightower and Bran, who wanted to climb everything, and you know, and there's a tower involved with one of his first traumas, and he's sort of headed to being at the top of the world, looking down, keeping watch for his enemies, and like there's that image of what Bran might be becoming in a very mundane way.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say too, I feel like we can't talk about Leighton for too long without talking about Lord of the Rings, because I think he's 100 million % a Denethor, parallel proxy, whatever you want to
I
call
thought
it.
you were going to say Saruman. Saruman, but
I mean, I guess Saruman as well, but I think,
But no, I agree about
Denethor,
Denethor.
because Denethor particularly, I mean, you know, more so in the books, which are so rich, and you know, the movies are a pale imitation. But no, but Denethor, you know, he's up in the high towers of Minas Tirith, staring into his palantir, into his, you know, in effect, the glass candle. I mean, the glass candles are
Right.
George R. R. Martin's palantirs, palantiri, and you know, he's being twisted by Sauron as he looks into the palantir and sees the eye, and you know, he's losing his nut, and so losing his mind. Sorry,
Is a nut?
mixed.
got
I
one
mixed
nut.
two idioms. Please, that was an accident. He's just losing his jism all. No, wait.
Yes,
it's getting
that's
worse.
what I heard.
doing.
That's what I heard.
No, I mean, I think I don't know exactly what George is doing with the Denethor thing and Leighton, but I think it's definitely there. Like this absentee, regent king figure who is locked away in the high towers with his dark magic and stuff. It very well may be true that Leighton is not in fact a dark magician, but is just like a weirdo or
With his
some
trains.
guy who sits around all day. But that's George. I think either way, it's George playing with something from Tolkien.
Can I
I'm
ask?
sad that we didn't get John Noble cast as Leighton Hightower, you know?
What's
Eating
a
those cherry tomatoes.
what's a palantir for those of us who haven't read the Tolkien books? Like it, because I was reading something and it talked about that Denethor comparison, but I didn't know what a palantir was.
The Palantiri, they are the seeing stones. The Palantir were
Nerd.
made by the Noldor back in Eldamar in the time of the trees, and then given by the elves to the Númenóreans. So the Palantiri are basically just glass balls. They're seeing stones. The Númenóreans, who were like these Atlantean type like supermen who sunk into the ocean, they used them as basically like long distance radio communication. Most of the stones ended up lost, but one of them ended up in the hands of Sauron, and another one ended up in the hands of Denethor, the steward of Gondor, and Saruman as well had one. I know there's another one out there somewhere.
Okay.
The idea being that Sauron used this network of like magical seeing stones to kind of pull Saruman and Denethor and it seduce them into his power.
Denethor was radicalized on the Palantir.
Exactly. The Palantirs are like eight kun or whatever, and like Denethor logs on and gets his Q drop, and
Oh boy.
No. So was there?
Yeah.
S drop.
where we go one great eye, we go. Never mind.
This is probably getting
that
cut.
surveillance.
Yeah.
There's that surveillance angle to the Palantiri too.
Yes.
Was
Which is why
when the
Peter
hobbits have
Thiel
them.
named his evil surveillance company in the real world Palantir, which is just fucked. Like,
Well, that's
what
the
a-
only
what a-
reason why I know what it is because that was in the news, and then all you guys started nerding out about it, and I'm like, what is this? This is a Tolkien reference, okay?
Was one of Denethor's kids involved with it too? Because something that I don't know that we've explicitly mentioned in our talk about Leighton Hightower is that he's supposedly locked up there with his eldest daughter. And I'm not trying to draw a George incest thing or anything like that. But like,
Oh boy.
look, that's not where I was going. But wasn't... For the Tolkien reference, wasn't Denethor... There was something with his kids that I am not remembering, and I don't know anything more deep than what I saw in the movies.
So Denethor has two kids, Boromir and Faramir, and they both sort of act like Leighton's kids, like Baelor and
Garth.
I forget the other one. We already named him, but essentially they go out and take care of the day-to-day of the kingdom, and Denethor is kind of on his own with his Palantir and being a weirdo and eating his tomatoes. And so the relationship there's not really a Melora in Denethor's story. That's just something George may have added in because he thought it was funny or creepy or something. It adds weird connotations that it's just him with his supposedly insane daughter.
Yeah.
In as much as there is a connection with Melora, Denethor really loses his nut when Boromir dies.
Right.
It's a new idiom, guys. Stop looking at me like that. I made it up.
Losing his nuts.
I made my idiom.
He's just up there nutting all the time.
Jesus Christ.
Constantly nutting.
Nutting down from the high tower.
Yeah.
And who's watching?
No, that's not what I meant by nutting.
What you do about nutting?
The nutty Professor Layton.
Oh my God.
That was pretty good. Denethor really goes off the deep end when his eldest son Boromir dies. And then he tries to get his younger son Faramir killed because he's all like, oh, it should have been you. And so he doesn't have a good relationship with his kids. And I don't know exactly how Melora plays into that kind of parallel, but you do got to wonder if there's some sort of weird obsessive thing there, because that's certainly, and of course Boromir, was trying to get the ring, and was very tempted by power and all that. So maybe Melora too is very tempted by magical powers or something. But
Maybe they
I don't
just
know.
have
Yeah, I
daddy
mean,
issues.
it's obviously not 1-to-1,
Right,
but
yeah.
It's enough of a reference that people immediately go, well, this is Denethor.
right, and that there's a possibility of a connection.
Yeah, that connection makes sense, and them staying up there, and then also losing touch. Combining all that, the high tower, that ivory tower that they're all stuck up in.
You can't have a proper fantasy landscape without like a guy growing a beard in a tower,
Weirdos
looking
in a
into
tower.
his stone.
Ooh, maybe he does have. Maybe that's what he's been doing, growing out his beard.
Oh, and then he's gonna climb down the high tower, or he's gonna let
On
down his
the
beard.
beard!
Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it was Tolkien all along, and
I think
really,
that's gonna happen.
it's Tangled.
It was
That's why
tingled.
oh my god, that's why he needs Melora. She is his Rapunzel.
Now I see
Melora
the
knows
light.
best.
Combine my beard and your hair, Melora. We will climb down this tower.
Oh,
He has a
beautiful.
dream. He has a dream. I don't remember all the songs from this movie.
Speaking of incest,
Wow, okay.
So matter of factly. Yeah, the incest. Let's talk about it.
here's a post called "How the Tyrells Were Like the Lannisters All Along." by user Galazum. And this is it's just kind of a 1-to-1 comparison of Tywin and Cersei and Jaime and Tyrion to their counterparts in the Tyrell family. Tywin compared to Olenna, Marjorie compared to Cersei, Jaime compared to Loras, Tyrion compared to Willis. And noting that these two families that sort of have this similar structure with similar kinds of dynamics in it, and the leader of the family being kind of being schemers, and I thought there's these parallels. Like sometimes I think they can be overdrawn, and maybe this one is a little bit overdrawn, but also these structures, these repeating structures that keep coming up in the story throughout the story. I think I think Galazum is onto something about the way the structures repeat, and the discussion is actually really good too, and it's well worth perusing the discussion. I liked a point made by user Myrtle42, who said, yeah, the Tyrells are basically the Lannisters with a healthy family dynamic, which makes them much stronger. And I think that's accurate, and I think it's interesting that George puts us in the point of view of the traumatized family compared to being in the point of view of the family that actually looks after each other and protects each other. And so I think that's a really great point to bring up. And I also totally agree with user Fumblebrag, who notes in the discussion, Olenna is smarter than Tywin. She is much smarter than Tywin.
I'm glad you highlighted that comment from Myrtle42, because a lot of it is comparing how the two families treat their, in heavy air quotes, imperfect sons. That the Tyrell sons who have imperfections by Westerosi standards, Willis having been crippled in a jousting match, and Loras obviously not interested in marriage, that they're still kind of optimized for the family, and not in a purely cold and calculating way, although it's definitely to the family's benefit. But Willis gets to have a pretty good life. He's not an outcast. He's not hated. He holds down the fort for the family. He's this solid guy. And Loras obviously is winning immense prestige for the house, no matter what. Like they aren't viewing Loras being gay as something that is going to cause a rift between him and the entire rest of the Tyrell brood. And
which is actually more of a medieval sensibility than what the show did.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean,
tell us more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. Maybe not that exceptional. For a medieval dude to be into a little bit of buggery. But the point being that they put it well when they say that Tywin and Cersei openly loathe Tyrion, and the Tyrells just don't openly loathe each other. Like, it may seem like a very low bar to clear, but they clear it, and it's amazing how effective that can be, even in just real politics sense, not even including just like how happy people are.
I think it's interesting, too, the parallel with Tyrion and Wylis about how Sansa was like, they were trying to scheme to get Sansa married to Wylis so she could go live in Highgarden, but then she ended up getting betrothed to Tyrion and marrying him instead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It gets really on the nose, making that comparison between Willis and Tyrion. It's the two choices in front of Sansa.
Well, and to like the happy family versus like the dysfunctional family. It's like, look, you could get married into this happy family and live in a garden with flowers, but no, you get the Lannisters.
You get the other one.
You get their awesome giant rock. Cool.
Who would win, one big rock or a bunch of flowers?
A bunch of flowery boys, yeah.
Yeah.
I was reading this through and I was thinking about what's the difference here, and it's very clear. It's Garland.
The
the
Lannisters had a fourth kid.
If they just had Garland Tyrell is the pure, perfect person that fixes all families. Without him, it falls apart. We all need Garlands in our lives. That's basically the lesson here.
Aw. I like this point in the original post at the top of the post about how Cersei and Marjorie, they both explicitly look like they're brothers.
Yeah, that's a good point. And where Cersei and Jaime obviously have the very dark version of that, where where there's that. Marjorie and Loras, as far as we know, I guess in the books it could still be canon that they are somehow doing a Cersei Jaime, but it seems very unlikely, specifically because I think we're drawing this contrast where, guess what? It's possible for like two attractive people to look like each other and be siblings and not have sex. Like, that's crazy. Whoa.
Well, I mean,
I don't know about that.
I mean, there may have been an
kind of story
interesting
do you wanna
dynamic when you
read?
throw Renly in there, like
That's true.
Loras and Renly, Marjorie and Renly, like.
That's true. Yeah. That is that's like a I mean, the show went there, certainly.
Yeah.
If we're drawing that comparison, does that make Rhaegar Cersei's Renly?
Rhaegar, Cersei's Renly.
Hold up. I'm doing I've got the like triangles and Pythagorean theorems like flying around over my head.
Triangles on top of triangles.
Doing the math.
I don't think this works, but I like the idea
Venn
that
triangles.
Rhaegar and Jaime did not have much of a relationship. But then again, Cersei was obsessed with Rhaegar, and the same way Loras was for Renly, and the other sibling didn't really seem to be all that interested.
No, but I mean, Renly and Loras had a relationship.
Yeah, this doesn't work.
Yeah, and Rhaegar
Yeah, it doesn't work at
and
all.
Cersei were not involved at all.
But she wanted to be very badly.
Well, yeah.
In her mind.
In this one instance, you can hardly blame Cersei because as a kid, she went to a woods witch from our earlier discussion who told her that she would marry the king or marry a king. I can't remember the exact article. But, I mean, how could you not grow up and make that assumption? I'm just saying we all would have done the same thing. We all would have pined after Rhaegar.
We all would have done everything that Cersei did in her position. Yeah. Every single thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Losing that nut, huh?
I think there's something really interesting too with the comparison between Tyrion and Wylis. One of Tyrion's most wit and wisdom of Tyrion Lannister lines is like all dwarfs are bastards in their father's eyes, right? And granted, Wylis and Tyrion do not share the same like physical conditions. Wylis is not a dwarf, and Tyrion was not, permanently injured in a jousting accident. But Wylis is kind of this counterpoint to Tyrion's argument that all dwarfs are bastards in their father's eyes, and here using dwarfs as the like cripples, bastards, and broken things catch all for imperfections. That actually, no, not all fathers have to be. It's not an inherent necessity of being imperfect that you are going to be hated.
Tywin is just a really shit father.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm going for. Yeah, is that like were Tyrion born to the Tyrells, his life would have been different. And I mean, I think there's some really interesting reflection that happens in Tyrion's chapters. I think we talked about this on on episode 22 with Tyrion and Penny, and the way Tyrion's self-image as a dwarf is kind of challenged by Penny, but I think also his self-image as a imperfect son is challenged by the image of Wylis Tyrell.
I don't disagree with it. I really like that comparison. I just wonder if the difference in story as to why, or one of the reasons that Tyrion is so hated unfairly, is that his mother died in childbirth with him, and so there's that trauma of losing his mother and Tywin's wife, whereas with Willis, his crippling came. How old was he? I mean, he was in a joust, so at least a teenager, if not older. I'm not sure. And
he was like a high school football player.
So, but I mean, I still think the overall comparison of the Tyrells to the Lannisters is really good. It's just that I wonder at the specific circumstances, I guess.
That's a good point, too. And that's something that doesn't come up as much in the post. But one huge difference here is that there are women in the Tyrell family. And there really aren't in the Lannister family, with the exception of like Aunt Jenna or Jenna, yeah, Gemma, whatever. The aunt, Cersei is very much alone, whereas like Marjorie grows up in a court of women and like has a grandmother who looks after her and a mother who looks after her. Like there's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if George is doing something there about. Maybe George is actually very conservative at heart and believes you need a nuclear family to have a healthy family, and you need the mom and the dad and you know all that. But I don't think that's what he's going for. But maybe unintentionally. But yeah, that is a major difference between them for sure. Where the Lannister women at? Is what
they're dead.
Where indeed?
They're dead. I wonder to what extent the difference in station of birth makes two, right? Because I think Tywin would have hated Tyrion no matter what to an extent, but as you said, having Joanna there could have maybe helped soften their dynamic. But Willis is the eldest child and Tyrion's the youngest, right? Tywin's like, I don't need him for his whatever his plans, whereas it seems like the Tyrells sort of accept what they have and they're like, all right, so this is what we have, what can we do with it, or what can we do with them and still accepting them. And Matt was talking about Garland Tyrell being this sort of peacemaker within the family, but part of what made Garland so gallant is what was in fact a really gallant gesture on the part of his eldest brother Willis, of naming him the Gallant so that he wouldn't be associated negatively with a previous Garth, the Gross. And it's something that you kind of wonder, like, Jaime sort of almost starts to fulfill this big brother dynamic for Tyrion, right? And looks out for him a little, but he doesn't play the peacemaker. He's not empowered to do so because he's so busy trying to live up to his own ideals. He's not really that concerned with the family dynamics or doing that either, whereas he could be doing that for Garland and Willis and Tyrion. But rather what he's doing is, throughout his storyline in Storm, he keeps thinking that he's hated by many for what he feels is his finest act, but loved by one for, like, his worst thing. He does this thing that, like, actively hurts his youngest brother, whereas the Tyrells don't really cut each other down.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that thing with Willis nicknaming him the Gallant because he was like a chubby kid or something, right? And they were afraid he was going to get nicknamed like the chubby uncle or something. Is that
Garth the Gross, but I like
right?
chubby uncle.
Well, I mean that's his uncle Garth, but
I don't know, chubby uncle sounds cute.
It sounds like that game where you shove marshmallows in your mouth and you have to say, oh, is that chubby bunny?
Yeah.
Chubby bunny.
Game.
Chubby uncle.
Chubby
Should we
uncle.
play that game?
Chunkle.
I think next Maester Monthly, we all have to get marshmallows.
I like marshmallows.
I've got marshmallows.
This works.
Oh, shit. We can make hot chocolate.
I had hot chocolate.
Oh.
I'm ahead of the curve.
Yeah, you really are.
Trailblazer. Yeah. Them Tyrells. Love them. Can't live with them, can't live without them. All right.
Are you?
I'm just trying to... Well, that should do it for the Healthy Family Discussion Hour, a.k.a. Maester Monthly. We are still pseudo-monthly, just as advertised. We've never pretended to be anything other than pseudo-monthly. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Acast, and YouTube, and Spotify. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Maester Monthly. You can follow us on Facebook if you want, but follow us on Twitter. There are many of us here today, and I know that each of us deep in our hearts want one thing from you and one thing only, and that is for you to smash the MF and like button under all of these social media accounts. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you especially to the people of the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit, all 700,000 of you individually, for creating all the sweet, sweet content that's still out there today. It's a testament to the coolness of this fandom that we are able to just log on and talk about the wonderful things that you post. And of course, thank you to George, David Weiss, and DB Benioff, R.R. Martin, for writing the books. Yeah, I switched the names on purpose, so it's a parody.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Thank you for your service.
Completely
Thank you
lost
for being our host.
Completely lost my mind.
Did you lose your nut?
I lost my nut. I lost my... Whoop. Oh, there it goes. There's the nut. I have been Michael, also known as Bookshelf Stud.
And I have been Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And I have been Matt, also known as Joe Magician.
I have been Jen, also known as Jen Snow.
I've been Walda, also known as Fat_Walda.
And I have been Isobel, also known as Mighty Isobel.
Thank you guys for getting on this Google call with me. It's been a blast.
Should we clarify that Jen is Jen_Snow?
Oh, that's a good point. Yes. Editorial note.
Glass_table_girl.
I'm capital B Bookshelf Stud, for the record. Any other notes here? Joe? Matt?
What?
He's
Perfect.
capital J away, capital M addition.
That's absolutely right. Thank you for listening, everyone. We have been Maester Monthly, and we will catch you next pseudo month.
God damn it.
I lost my nut. I lost my... Whoop! Oh, there it goes. There's the nut.